time again for another edition of Vikings Mail Call. I'm Tom Moore from VikeFans.com, and as always, I'm joined by Minnesota Vikings Game Day Radio color analyst Pete Bercich. Pete, it's been a really promising week so far. There hasn't been one Viking who's shown up in the tabloids or on a police blotter.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we had a couple guys show up on injury reserve, and it seems like if it's not one thing with this team, it's another right now. And I feel right now, when I think about it, I feel for the coaching staff because those guys are just doing the best they can. They're doing everything that they possibly can. And, you know, there's that concern now about keeping that group together, keeping the team together. It's a tough situation right now, and you got to keep these guys going forward. You're coming in, playing a team like Atlanta, who they just absolutely dismantled Tampa Bay on Thursday night last week. I mean, they did, you know, they ran into a buzzsaw with Cincinnati, so I don't think they're going to be too high on themselves, so to speak, but they're experiencing success, and Matt Ryan and that offense is pretty darn good. So it'll be a good matchup.
Well, absolutely. And when, you know, as we said, it's great to see the off-field stuff settle down a little bit, but the game in New Orleans did create some fan buzz and questions, and as you can imagine, a lot of people are talking about the new rookie quarterback, but I actually wanted to start you tonight on the defensive side of the ball. Is that okay?
Yeah, sounds good.
Well, you know, it was painfully noticeable in the first two New Orleans drives that the Saints just cut through our defense with ease on their way to a quick 13-0 lead. But then after that, the Viking defense really seemed to control the Saint offense pretty good until the last drive. You know, Pete, what did you see? What did the Saints do that was so surprising to Mike Zimmer for those first two drives? And what did he do to adjust it to stop that bleeding?
You know, what was interesting was that Zimmer actually addressed that later in the week, and he said that they thought they had come on a few things or jumped on and tried to game plan, and then New Orleans just jumped on them. So it was kind of a, you know, they thought they had them on something, and, you know, they ended up not, which is a tough deal. I think if you want to look on the bright side, to come in with a game plan and then having that work early on, and then all of a sudden turn around and in the second half, or at least after the first two drives, just do so much better. It's pretty amazing that those guys are able to, you know, adapt like that on the fly. And I think, you know, the one thing that helped quite a bit, you know, they went more to some zone blitzes, and they were bringing safeties. Captain Munderland, or really he's an outside linebacker in the nickel situations. And, you know, I saw him walk down and come off the edge a few times, and they never blocked him. They never accounted for him. So they caught him off guard with that. So it was nice to see them make some adjustments, regardless of what happened and how it went the first couple series. You know, last year before, when we started out 13-0 early in the first quarter, that would have been it. It would have gotten pear-shaped. It would have been lopsided very, very quickly. But they hung in there, and going into the fourth quarter, we stopped them at midfield. If not for that penalty for Captain Munderland slamming Breeze on the ground, we would have had the ball somewhere 30-yard line after the punt or so, and been down 4 points. So that was a key moment in the game. I mean, one play never wins or loses a game, but, you know, we had them stopped. And, you know, they just, after that penalty, they give them the first down. It just kind of, I think, let the wind out of their sails a little bit. So great adjustments. Yeah, they did get caught off guard. I thought they had him on something, but Breeze is getting paid a lot of money for a reason. He's a very, very good quarterback, and Sean Payton's a very good coordinator and head coach, and they got some free runners early. It was kind of the zone blitz and hitting the tight ends up the seam. I mean, just throwing it to guys they don't normally throw it to. And I think that's really the change-up that they did that put the Vikings on their heels early.
Well, I'll tell you what, you hit right on the talking point for most Viking fans. Right then and immediately after the game was that personal foul on Captain Munderland tossing Drew Brees to the ground. But from an objective standpoint, Pete, was that really a personal foul in your opinion, or was Munderland simply trying to get Brees to the ground before he could launch one of those last-second passes?
I think so. I mean, you look at the play and Breeze, you know, they didn't blow the whistle, and Breeze, if the quarterback is in that kind of situation, he's still going to try to throw the ball down the field. I mean, that's what they do. And it's kind of one of those things where if you look at it and by the letter of the law, so to speak, it didn't look good because the legs are flopping over and all that. But when you saw how hard the guy hit the ground, I mean, Captain Munderland did not slam him to the ground. I mean, Captain Munderland's one of the handful of guys on the field that's actually smaller than Breeze, and they're going out of their way to protect the quarterback, and that's just life in the NFL these days, and it's unfortunate. And you know, I don't know what else. You know, what else can you do? You know, they throw the flag, and you got to forget it and move on. And unfortunately, they had him stopped, and it just didn't work out. But yeah, I didn't like the call. I mean, for a number of reasons. I'm not saying it was a bad call. I just don't like the call, which is a bit of a technicality, I think. But if you're calling things to protect the quarterback, he was by no means in jeopardy with that throwdown.
It's a Viking God-given fact that we're allowed to complain. So we have to ask that question. A lot of people did. Breeze didn't do much of throwing punches. It looked like a girl trying to hit somebody on Robert Blanton, but he did throw a couple of punches. Why didn't he get a flag?
He threw a couple open hand slaps, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
You asked that question. I don't know if he got fined for it or whatever, but yeah, I know it is what it is. He took exception to it. I think the referees are human beings, and I remember having this conversation with Tony Dungy years ago, talking about instant replay and those kinds of things, and he's like, the human element of the game is what makes football great. It makes legends. I mean, the immaculate reception, if they had instant replay, it may not have happened because that ball may have hit the ground. There may have been a trap by Franco Harris. So that's just how it is. You just have to live with it and, do what you can and go from there. So that's it. I mean, I hate to leave it like that, but really that's the case.
Sure. Well, in that explanation, you said that referees are human beings, but I don't know if you're going soft on me. I've never heard you say some of my best friends are referees.
No, they're not. No, they're not. I mean, that's the part that's frustrating for coaches too, because you look at a game like that, and your livelihood's on the line, and then you have somebody out there that's blowing calls or not making calls. I mean, that's tough. I mean, that's very, very tough to live with, and that's why a lot of those guys, lose it on the sidelines, and they struggle because here you are, you could play a great game. You could have used that win. I mean, if you go out and beat New Orleans in New Orleans and have all those injuries and things, I mean, it would have been a fantastic game. That's the NFL. That's all you can do.
Be honest, when they called that personal foul, did they have to pull out the paddles for Paul Allen?
Yeah, he was kind of wondering what was going on a little bit. And, I think, again, when you saw it and you saw the legs fly, you're like, we knew what it was. And then when we saw the replay, that's when things kind of let loose a little bit. But PA kept us calm, I think.
Well, that's good. Well, as we turn to the offense, this is more of a basic question. It could be for any team, but can you help fans understand why NFL teams can run scripted plays at the start of the game, but then they can't do it later, or even run the scripted package again in the second half and see if it can be effective?
Well, offense it's all about dictating what goes on. And if you're an offensive coach, you don't want to let the defense dictate what you're doing by what they're doing. You want to go out there and run your plays and run your adjustments. And what they'll do is they'll put together 10 or 12 plays that all work together, and they'll kind of guess what kind of defenses they're most likely to get. But what you do, though, is you run that script all throughout the week. And so Saturday night before the game, they go through the script again, and these guys have gone through these plays, the same plays in the same order all week long. So they have a very good grasp, and there's a comfort level. So a lot of times offenses, when they come out and they're on script and things are working, they're on a roll, and it's very, very hard to stop. Now, you can only script so much because then you can't carry 500 different plays. You have to limit it because you can only these guys can only execute so much.
Right.
And you make some adjustments, and then you get off script. You may go back to some of those plays that you had before, but we had this conversation a couple of years ago. I think it was back in like 06 and 07 when we had kind of the scripted deal, and we'd start out and score points, and then we would just go dry. It's a game of adjustments. I mean, look what our defense did. They came out with an idea, didn't work. They made adjustments. So you can only script for so long. But I think the key to the script is that they practice that script all throughout the week, and same plays, same order. They know the first one, then by the end of the week, they know the first 5-10 plays like the back of their hand. They know what's going to get called. So when they hear it in the huddle, they get to the line, there's a comfort level there. And after a while, you kind of lose that. So, yeah, that's the script.
Okay. Well, the move to the Teddy Bridgewater era began early in the second quarter when Matt Castle went down with his broken foot. What were your impressions of Bridgewater's performance? I'll
say this. From a raw talent standpoint, he made some throws outside that were absolutely fantastic, and they were off the back foot. The kid has an immense amount of arm strength, and that's something our offense has been missing, with Christian Ponder and with a number of other, even with Castle a little bit, is that the deep comebacks, the deep out routes, those kinds of things on the outside. And then back when we had Adrian, we knew we had one-on-ones on the outside. I mean, we may not be seeing that much anymore, but he has that arm strength. Also, he's so mobile, but he doesn't scramble to run. He scrambles to look downfield and keeps his eyes and vision downfield. And I like that because, running quarterbacks, as you can see, you look at RG3 and the rest of those guys, they don't last very long because they just get too beat up. Michael Vick, I mean, these guys could take a pounding. And, for him to have longevity in the league, he's going to have to be a passer. And, I think he has the tools. If you stand next to him, I mean, he's maybe 6'1", 6'2", and he's skinny. I mean, he's really slight. And so you wonder how many hits he could take and stay healthy. But if he's a good athlete, that's going to help.
Yeah, well, Pete, Teddy's going to have some problems being effective without a strong running game. And, Matt Asiata's, he's really showing he's more of a 2 yards in a cloud of dust type runner. I'm curious, why haven't we seen more of the preseason standout Joe Banyard to this point? He gives us a little bit of quickness and speed out of the backfield, or at least it seems so.
Yeah, it seems so. But don't forget Joe Banyard, when, in the preseason was out there against the trees, and you expect a guy who can be a starter to stand out against the twos and the threes. The problem with our running game is it's just not efficient. We average 2.7 yards a rush against New Orleans, who doesn't necessarily have a stellar run defense. And you have to find a way to get that number over 3. Mm-hmm. You can't have lost yardage plays. And right now, I think, Asiata's he's struggling a little bit. He's not Adrian Peterson. We all know that. And, the kid's just going to have to continue to work, and North Turner's got to come up with some creative ways to run the football. And those could be quick screens on the outside. They could be a lot of these other short passes that are basically runs. But the other problem that Norv's going to have is that there's nothing about this offense now that's going to concern people. Maybe Cordero Patterson, but, as a defensive coordinator, who do you game plan to stop? Because you just don't have a lot of firepower left on offense.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cordero Patterson, and he seems almost largely missing from both the passing game and the run game. How do they get him back in the mix?
Yeah, you do. And I look at what he did on the return game. I mean, I believe he had 5 kickoff returns for about 100 and some yards, and that caught a lot of flack from listeners and people on Twitter and everything else, because I just don't think you should have a starting receiver returning kicks. I mean, periodically that's fine, but when you give them a steady diet of returning kicks and everything else, we don't have any depth at wide receiver anymore. I mean, we really don't. Jerome Simpson, obviously, he's been suspended, but he's gone. So you have, who do you have left? I mean, Jarius Wright. I mean, you have some of these other guys that need to take and get in there, because with Teddy, his ability to scramble, these receivers can't stop running routes anymore. They can continue to run routes because Teddy can extend the play. So they're going to have to break some of these shorter routes off into deep routes, and that's the time when those guys need to come off the field for a play or two to get a break. And if you're running the returns back and then going right in an offense and it's a 2-minute drill, that's tough duty. And then you lose a step because you're tired. Well, Cordero Patterson, if you remember the end of last year, he was so dynamic, and he was just a step faster from everybody else. Well, that's because he still had a full tank of gas left. Mm-hmm. And I just came away from that game thinking that he and Jennings, by the end of the game, were just wiped out. Whether or not that's the case, I don't know. But those guys, it didn't look to me like they had any gas left in the tank.
Yeah, it seems like they might put Adam Thielen back there at least once or twice on a kickoff return. He did a decent job in the preseason.
Yeah, he did, and and he's out there getting reps with the regular offense, and so. Those are the kinds of guys that have to step up. I mean, Thielen is going to have to absorb a decent amount of this offense and become part of it, because it's just not going to work.
Yeah, well, we've got everybody on the team, it seems, except Mike Zimmer on injured reserve, and the road doesn't get any easier for the Vikings as they host the high-flying offense with Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons. Pete, how do the Vikings contain him?
Well, you got to get after him, and that's what Cincinnati did. They got him on the ground, they pressured him, they roughed him up, they were physical. Those are the kinds of things that you're going to have to do. So it's going to be, on our defensive line, because their running game isn't going to put the fear of God in anyone. But man, they could throw the ball. Julio Jones. I mean, they have so many Roddy White. They've got some receivers now. They have speed and some dynamic guys to throw the ball to. So you can't let them throw the ball up and down the field. This might be keep a guy out of the box, trying to make them run the football game, because, man, they can throw it and they can cover ground. But if you can get after the quarterback a little bit and get him on the ground and shake him up, I think you have some success.
And on the offensive side, what do you expect Norv to do with this offense with the loss of so many key players and Bridgewater starting his first game?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. I mean, we saw Vladimir Dukas step in, and he had a couple penalties early, so hopefully with a little bit of experience under his belt, he's going to be all right. He's not going to, be too, struggle too much out there. get him in a rhythm, run the ball. I mean, normally when you have young linemen, you want the football, get those guys moving forward. I don't know if we're going to have that ability.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, Matt Khalil didn't have his best game again, and Charlie Johnson even struggled as well. So, I feel sorry for Bridgewater to a degree.
Well, that's it. I mean, and it's up to him. He has to step up and get those guys playing. I mean, I don't want to say it's his responsibility. These guys are all professionals. They get paid very well, and they have to be accountable for what they're doing. But that has to start to come together and come together quickly. When you have these so many young guys, you want to maybe peel back on the game plan, keep things as simple as possible. But man, that's tough to do. I mean, especially when you have to be creative. It's not as if you can just run the ball off tackle and have it be a dynamic play like you could with Adrian Peterson. You can, the old saying in coaching is the better your players, the thinner your playbook.
Yeah.
You're losing some guys here, and you're gonna have to find a way to get creative.
Absolutely. Well, we want to turn our attention a little bit. It's a big weekend out at TCF Bank Stadium as VikeFans.com is hosting our annual tailgate party. So we're going to go to your culinary side. You've either been playing or coaching or calling action on football games for over 20 years, so you really have no idea about tailgating. But if you could attend the party, Pete, what kind of food and beverage would you bring?
Well, from a food standpoint, I'm pretty simple. I mean, burgers and brats. I mean, that's like my favorite thing to grill out. The charcoal. It's got to be a charcoal though. It can't be gas grill. But you get the charcoal, you get the burgers and brats going. And from a drink standpoint, oh man, I don't know. It could be anything. Iced tea, sweet tea. That's one of my favorite things. So I think some sweet tea, some burgers and brats, and away you go.
Sounds good. Well, we know you're going to be preparing for the game with PA, but as a goodwill gesture to the fans, you can always drop that food and drink donation off before the game,
Okay, absolutely. I'll do that. I can do that.
Well, our final question tonight is a topic that's really pretty sensitive around the league. And as you know, there have been a lot of groups calling for the Washington franchise to change the Redskin nickname because they find it disrespectful to Native Americans. And in fact, in the game tonight when they play the Giants, the announcers may not use the Redskin name when calling the action. So, Pete, I wondered from your perspective, what's your thought on this issue? And if you were the broadcaster, would you refrain from using this 71-year-old nickname?
No, I wouldn't. I would absolutely, because, growing up, they were the Redskins, and when Theismann was out there, they've been the Redskins, and they always were, and I don't understand necessarily how it's derogatory in that respect. I mean, you step back and you think, it's like, well, who can comment on this? I mean, who really can? Is it the Native Americans? Are they the ones that can determine whether or not a word is used or not used? I know there's some back and forth between ownership and how the name came about, but the Redskins have been the Redskins, like you said, for a very, very long time. It's football. This is how it is. And then what are you going to do? You're going to start changing names and going after all these mascots. It started in high school. I remember maybe 15, 20 years ago, it started in high school with mascot names, and now it's worked its way up to the NFL, but the franchise is the franchise. I don't know who can step up and say, yeah, we can use this name and we can't. But for the general public, they don't have any, for lack of a better term, skin in the game, if you will, on this thing. So just sit back, relax, and and enjoy the game. I mean, it's not. I just don't like the idea of a small group of elites out there trying to dictate to everybody else what can be called what, when, and where. I just recoil from that, and I just don't think it's America. I just don't think it's right. Let the franchise deal with it. Let them handle it. If they want to, if they're going to do it and change their name, then do it. But, don't have a bunch of people riding in limousines and things walking around saying, and writers and all these other people saying, hey, this is wrong and we got to change it. Who are they to say that?
Yeah, well, you'll appreciate this is, there actually was some people that said, we got to change the name from the Fighting Irish because that's disrespectful, and you're going to like this story. I'm over in Ireland this year, and I'm talking to a guy over there, and I said, are you offended by that? They said, well, heck no, we do fight. So I think we're okay.
And that's the thing, and they took surveys of all different ethnicities on the Redskins, and it was the same way regardless of race and everything else. Again, it's not a bottom-up type of a push here. This is not the people and the fans of football and the people, your normal guy, people and men and women in America that are standing up and wanting this name changed. It's coming from the top down. And like I said, I just reject that. I don't like that idea. And the team is a team, and let's go.
Sounds good. Well, with that, we bring a close to another edition of Pete Bercich's Viking Mail Call. And Pete, you want to make sure we catch him on Twitter. He's got a legion of fans, and you can follow him at Pete Bercich. So until next week, for Pete Bercich, I'm Tom Moore. So long, everyone.